had a dream about this last night. Even these people were trying to get the secret of the single rate tuition model out of me. But a year and a half ago, we started exploring the possibility of combining tuition and fees, and that stemmed from the concern we were receiving from students about the complexity of understanding their bills, the administrative complexities in managing all of those fees. Like Domingo was saying earlier, is the more fees that we have, the more likelihood there is that maybe one of them doesn't get put in on time, or one of them doesn't get charged on time, etc. But also helping students understand how much it's really going to cost. How do I know what it's going to cost me without needing to predict what the course-specific fees were? So there are a couple of things to keep in mind, is that there are 3 essential costs to our students here at the institution. One of them is tuition, one of them is general fees, and the third one are called course-specific fees, meaning that there is a fee associated with a specific course that a student might enroll in. And those courses specifically have to do with STEM-related courses or lab-related courses. The course-specific fees range in cost, mostly from $75 to $90, and the $75 would, for example, be a lab fee, meaning that if a student took a biology course or even a studio arts course, they'd pay an additional $75. The $90 would be for a web-based course, meaning that a student's taking an online course. So it isn't necessarily fees for STEM students, but you could be a non-STEM student taking an online course and be paying a whole lot more than a student who's paying for STEM lab. Well, when a student registers for a class, they have a sense of what the tuition is, which right now is $114 per credit hour. And like Regent Garcia said, if you look at that long list of fees, they could pretty much calculate, what am I going to have to pay in terms of general fees, depending on how many hours I take. But it isn't until they actually register that they're going to understand exactly how much they're going to have to pay that semester, because they may register for a course that has a course-specific fee, and then that cost goes up. So when we started pulling sample bills from students, the cost of attendance here ranges anywhere from $184 right now to $215, depending on what courses you take and how many credit hours you take. So a year and a half ago, we started talking about the possibility of combining all of these fees into a single rate, so that students wouldn't have to struggle with figuring out what the cost of attendance was going to be, and they didn't have to translate their bills once they received them in terms of what they were paying for. So a year and a half ago, we started visiting with students about this model, doing presentations to students, asking them to complete surveys, asking them to provide us with feedback. And then we also started doing research on what institutions across the country are doing something similar, and trying to understand why they did something similar and what the single rate has been doing for them thus far. So our students, in doing these presentations, showed support for the model, and overwhelming support, because of the complications of understanding the fees. And those were the students who received classroom presentations or presentations at open forums that we had about it. And the notion is essentially, can we find a rate that helps us capture all of the revenue that we're currently capturing from our existing structure, and roll it all up into one single rate? And tell students that if they pay this one rate, they're no longer responsible for any general fees on top of that, and they're no longer responsible for course-specific fees on top of that as well. And or any other kind of program fees. For example, nursing students have to pay specific fees as well, and they wouldn't have to be responsible for paying those anymore. They wouldn't be responsible for paying a fee for graduation anymore, or some of those other fees, or a fee for setting up a payment plan, for example. Essentially, the only fee that our students would have to pay is the one required if they set up a payment plan and then make a payment late. That's the only late fee that they would have to pay, is if they fail to make their payment on time. So what have we done to kind of figure out what that rate needs to be right now? So the first thing we did is try to determine what is the total revenue that we receive right now from our tuition and fees, okay? Because that would be the break-even point, basically. So if you take it, what our actual revenue is this current year for in-state tuition, we receive about $2 million on in-state tuition, a combined $846,000 in fees, and about $109,000 in out-of-state tuition. Okay, so the percentage of out-of-state tuition is very small. So when we're talking about applying some sort of rate that helps us stay whole, meaning that helps us retrieve level funding, we started off with what did we make this year, and what kind of rate helps us capture that back, or going forward, if we were to apply an increase, what kind of increase would we be looking at and how much revenue would that generate? So it wasn't as simple as that, because as we started drilling down here on the left-hand side, we started looking at the total number of credit hours that we offered in the summer, in the fall, and the spring, which comprises the current fiscal year. And we added up all of the tuition, which is about $2.1 million, okay? And we divided it by the total number of credit hours, and realized that there's a large percentage of credit hours that are not funded. And that's for a couple of reasons. One of them is because our dual credit students that take credits, they don't have to pay tuition, so we don't receive tuition on them. And then we also, like most other institutions, is provide our faculty and staff with tuition waivers, meaning that if they want to take a class, they don't have to pay for one. So there's a disparity between the total number of credit hours we offer and the ones that actually get funded. And our math shows us that about 29% of the credit hours that we offered this year were not paid for, okay, for a number of reasons. And those reasons include dual credit, faculty and staff waivers, but also because we may have a student who registers for courses, and then they decide they don't want to come, and they don't ever come, and they're never disenrolled. And those credit hours just kind of stay on the books. So, for example, we pulled a list of midterm grades, and we see that there are 52 students who have 4 classes, and all those 4 classes are failing grades. Our assumption is that student just never showed up, right? If they have Fs on all 4 of their classes, the assumption is they just never showed up. So, but those credit hours sometimes don't ever get removed. So those are the 3 reasons why there's a disparity. So we can't just say, well, this is how many credit hours we offered this year, multiply it by $114, and that's how much you're going to get in tuition. We reduced that $26,000 credit hours to 71%, which means that in FY15, the current fiscal year, we received funding for about 18,700 credit hours, okay? Well, like Domingo said, the budget is built on an assumption that there will be a 10% decrease in enrollment. Now, enrollment means a number of things. It means students, and it means credit hours. Well, credit hours are really what drive funding, not necessarily the number of students, because you may have some students that are taking 17 credit hours, but they're not really even paying for 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 credit hours. They're just paying for 12. So we took this 18,000 and applied a 10% increase to that number, okay? Which means that next year we expect receiving funding for about 16,800 credit hours. So the kind of mental gymnastics included figuring out how many credit hours are funded, what percentage of that we expect to fund next year, and that's what I kind of just walked you through. So based on all of that, we created these tables right here on the right-hand side that show, okay, on a tuition increase here, if the board were to approve a tuition increase of 5 through 10%, what the new revenue would be, okay, from that kind of increase here on in-state tuition, what the new revenue would be, and if I were to take that total revenue and divide it by what we anticipate our credit hours to be, this is what the new rate would be, okay, for students moving forward just for tuition, okay? And we did the same thing for our fees here on the bottom, and then we combined it to get what we would identify to be the single rate. So this is how the tables work. If the board were to approve a 5% tuition increase, okay, the single rate would be $180.77 per credit hour. And it increases on a scale of about $9, meaning that if the board were to approve a 6%, it would go up by $2, $2 more at 7%, another $2 more at 7.5%, 8%, 9%, 10%. So you'll see the range is about $9, a little bit less. Okay? And that happens to be for in-state students. The table on the bottom is what it would be for out-of-state students. Right now, our out-of-state students pay $425 per credit hour.